Hi, I'm Faith, and you're watching Willoughby DIY. I have 3 projects for you guys today. First one is a Dollar Tree DIY, where I make bookends using tumbling tower blocks and decorate them with gnomes, because, why not? Followed by an upcycle, where I turn 2 recycled bottles into gorgeous vases. And last but certainly not least, this amazing dupe of a Kirkland hanging flower planter. So stay tuned to the end so you can see how I do that one. So let's get started. For these bookends, you're going to need about 64 tumbling tower blocks and some wood glue. You can definitely use hot glue if you like, but I don't like how it leaves gaps sometimes whenever you use the hot glue. So I'm just going to take my wood glue and a paintbrush so that I don't have too much excess glue whenever I put my blocks together. So what you see here is half of one of the bases. For each base, you're going to need 12 of the blocks, and I'm going to put them together in groups of 6. So you just glue together your first 6 just like this, and I'm using this carpenter square that I picked up from the Dollar Tree to keep all my pieces nice and even. And then you're going to make another 6. I find it easier if you just go ahead and put all the wood glue on the pieces and then put them together. And now that that's together, we can attach these pieces, and I put wood glue along the long edge of that piece, and then we just stick them together, make sure they're nice and even, and that's your first base. Just going to repeat that with another 12 blocks, and we have both our bases. Now for the back part that sits up against the books, you're going to need 20 pieces for each. And I'm going to put these together in groups of 10, just like we did with before, just with a longer line of them. And I'm just going to use this ruler so that while I'm pushing them together, none of the blocks pop up. Clean up any excess glue you have seeping out, and then take another 10 blocks and make another, and connect those together, and you have your first back of your bookends. Take another 20 blocks and make another. Now you have both your bases and your backs. For the bases, I want them to have little feet, so I'm taking 8 of these wood cubes from the Dollar Tree, and I just attach them onto the bottoms of my bases, flush with the edge of the blocks. And I did that using wood glue. Now we're going to attach the backs of our bookends onto the bases. And I'm just doing wood glue right now, and I used my square to make sure I got a nice 90-degree angle, and I just hold it up using a gnome and a bottle of alcohol. And in case you couldn't tell I was putting them together, this is how I did it. We're going to repeat that with your second one, and then once they've dried for about 30 minutes, I go in and add staples to them. Just make sure the staples you're using are the right size so that they don't poke out the other side of your blocks. I punched in 4 staples into the back of mine, and that was pretty sturdy. I repeated that with my other bookend, and then it was time to stain. I'm going to stain mine using this Minwax Dark Walnut stain, and I just wipe that onto my bookend, and almost immediately I wipe it off with a dry part of my rag. And we're just going to apply that the same way all over this bookend, making sure we get the edges, and if you opted for the feet, don't forget those. And you can use other things for the feet if you wanted to add some little wood beads would be great. And then we're just going to repeat that staining process on our other bookend and let them dry. To decorate these, I chose these cute little Dollar Tree gnomes, and I'm going to customize them using this Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And I give them each 2 full coats. Now you could use anything you want to decorate these with. You could use small succulents, candles, whatever you got, whatever you like. Once these are all dry, I'm gonna take a chip brush and some elephant gray and sort of distress it, but I wasn't liking how that was looking, so I took a regular paintbrush dipped in water and just sort of smudged that paint around a bit, and then took a paper towel and dabbed and wiped at it to get the look I wanted. And this gave such a cool texture. I wish it showed up good on camera, but I think it's my lighting. I'm still fighting with it. And then after that, I just took some country gray, which is a warmer gray, and I'm gonna throw a little touch of that in here and there. And that's it for these guys. And these bookends are gorgeous. I love that dark walnut stain. And like I said, you can do anything you want to decorate these with. And I didn't attach these gnomes with glue or anything because now I can take them off and switch them out for any seasonal or holiday decor, or just if I feel like changing it out for some plants or candles, I can do that. For these upcycled bottle vases, I chose a beer bottle and a clear glass bottle. You can use whatever you got lying around. And for the beer bottle, I'm going to measure out a piece of burlap ribbon. This is from Walmart, but you can definitely use Dollar Tree ribbon. And I'm going to cut off the edge so that I can pull out some of the strands and make it look frayed at the edges. If you can hear my daughter in background, I am so sorry. She's a maniac. We're just going to put that right in the middle where the label would normally sit and just hot glue it down. And I did fold that one end over so it looked more neat. And I took my finger and just sort of ruffled the edges a bit. And to jazz it up a bit, I'm going to add a little piece of this Dollar Tree lace ribbon right down the middle of that burlap. And I just added some stems of white wildflowers from the Dollar Tree, and that was it. Now for the second vase, I'm going to make a textured paint using baking soda and this country gray by Apple Barrel. And I don't know the ratio I used. I just mixed it up until it was a thick but workable consistency. And then I taped up my bottle. However you like is fine. I wanted an asymmetrical look. And then I took my hobby knife, trimmed up excess tape, and rounded those corners. And then I'm just going to do a quick and dirty first coat and let it dry for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I did that all over the part where I want it painted. And while it dries, so will your paint mixture. So this is the second coat, and it goes on a little easier, covering more. So you can take your time with this one and really fill in those gaps. Now I would let this fully dry, and if you still have gaps, just take some of that paint and put a little bit to cover the spot and sort of feather it out so you don't have any sudden textural changes. Let it completely dry, and then you can take off your tape, which is so satisfying. But if you do have some bleed through or any paint anywhere, you can just scrape that off with your fingernail or hobby knife. Super easy. Now to decorate the top of this bottle, I'm just going to use some Dollar Tree jute twine. And I start by tying a knot right there at the base of where the cap would go on, and then I'm just going to wrap it. First at wrapping to cover that knot, and then just wrap all the way up. When I get to the top, I'm going to wrap back down, covering any gaps I might have missed. When I get to the end, I'm just going to hot glue that right down and trim off the excess. Now I added in some Spanish moss, but I would recommend putting it in after you add your floral stems to it, because when you go to put your floral stems in, if your Spanish moss is already in there, it'll just try to push them down, and it's just a fight to get it to look good. So do it after you add your stems. And I chose 2 of these artificial fern stems with the long stem from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take my labels off. And one of them I'm going to leave as is. The other I'm going to clip off about 4 of those little notches up. And it's kind of hard, but just wiggle it back and forth. You'll get it off of there. And then pop them right in your bottle and you're good to go. See, fighting with that moss. Definitely wait till after you get your stems in. Put in the moss if you want it. And I think these turned out beautiful. I love the amber colored bottle with the burlap and the lace. Is beautiful. The other one's got sort of a coastal vibe going on with it. It's really pretty though. Let me know what you think. Hey, real quick, could you go down there and tap that like button? Helps my channel out so much, and I'd really appreciate it. If you're interested, I have my Instagram and my Facebook group linked in the description box. And if you want, leave a comment, maybe to answer the question of the video, which is, if you made those bookends from the beginning of the video, what would you decorate them with? Now this project there's a lot of steps involved. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, but I got my inspiration for this project from this Kirkland item. It is a hanging metal planter with a pulley mechanism, but that price point, no thank you. I could definitely do it cheaper. So I started off with these Walmart wood rounds, and you get about 6 of these in a pack for maybe a little over $1. I don't know, they're real cheap though. They're about 3 1/4 inches across. We're gonna find our center on 2 of these, and then we're just gonna drill a hole down the middle. Now, if you don't have a power tool of any kind to do this, stay tuned because I will show you how to do it using the pointed tip shears from the Dollar Tree. And then I need 4 more wood rounds. 2 are probably a little under 1 inch across, and then the other 2 are about 1 inch across, maybe a little more. But you just need 2 different sizes of them. We're going to find our centers and punch holes in those as well. Now, my dowel rod is probably about 1/4 inch wide, so it wasn't going to fit in these. So I had to take these pointed tip shears and carefully just sort of twist it around in there and widen that hole. And you're going to do this on all 6 of your wood rounds. Just be very careful because you don't want the wood round to splinter. Once you have it the size you need, it should fit on there. Oops. It should fit on there pretty snug like this. And once you have all of them done, we're gonna sand them up real good because they have some splintery bits sticking out, you know. And it'd probably be easier to use sandpaper for this, but I couldn't find mine, so sanding sponge worked just fine. Now we're going to put everything together, and I'm going to take 4 of these wood cubes from the Dollar Tree and just some Dollar Tree wood glue. You can use whatever wood glue you got in combination with hot glue, making sure they do not mix. And we're going to place our first cube right along the edge of that hole we made. And then we're going to attach 3 more all around that hole. And when you're done, it should look something like this. And now we're just gonna put more wood glue and hot glue all over those little cubes. And quickly, but carefully, attach our other large wood round, making sure it's nice and even. Now for this, the little part that holds our hanger, we're gonna need 1 craft stick, and these are Dollar Tree craft sticks. Cut it exactly in half. And then we're going to need to poke a hole at the top. And you can do this just with these pointed tip Dollar Tree shears, garden shears. Be careful. These split super easy, so take your time and move very slowly. The dowel I chose for this is about half the size is the one that goes through my wood rounds. That way I didn't have to widen the hole too much. So you're going to do that with both your pieces of your craft stick. And then we're going to mark off everything, and you want it to be pretty flush with all your other parts. So put everything together so you can see exactly where you need to mark. And I didn't mark it flush because I have a rotary cutting tool, but if you don't, I would suggest marking it right up against the wood round or the craft stick. We're just going to cut them down, sand them off, and it's time to attach. For the craft stick pieces, we're just going to mark where they need to go right up against that hole and hot glue them on. Don't know why I didn't use any wood glue, but I forgot, I guess. Put you a little hot glue to hold those craft sticks onto the small wood dowel, and then fill your hole and your large wood rounds up with some hot glue and push that larger wooden dowel through there. Now, if you have a better way to do this, please do, because when you push it through, it gets covered in hot glue and you have to scrape it all off. It's a pain. Now we attach our small wood rounds using hot glue, and just make sure you don't put quite as much hot glue on for the smallest round. And when you're all done, it's looking something like this. And here's where I went ahead and trimmed mine flush. Like I said, if you don't have a cutting tool like this, I really recommend you mark it off exactly where you need to cut it. Now we're going to stain just the large wood round piece. And if you get stain anywhere else, it's fine because we're going to paint that anyway. I wanted to use 2 wood stains for this, so I covered mine, both my large wood rounds, inside, outside, and the edges, using this Polyshades Minwax in Antique Walnut. And then I went straight in and wiped on some Minwax Dark Walnut and wiped it off to get this nice rustic, dark but warm shade on that wood. And now I'm just going to take this apple barrel pavement gray and paint all over the craft stick and the small wood rounds, making sure to get inside of those craft sticks, all over that small dowel, and the edges. Don't forget those. And once you're done with that base layer, we're going to add in a little bit of metallic silver just to lighten it ever so slightly, and we're going to just dry brush dab that all over where we just put the pavement gray. And once you've got that layer done, we're going to lighten that a little bit more with the silver and dab that on as well. And to make those wooden dowels stand out, we're going to put some silver, just plain silver paint, right on those. And now it's time to attach our rope. And I'm using this brown nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. And it's probably about 4.5 to 5 feet long, but you can do yours however long you want. We're going to attach it on initially completely even to where the middle of the rope will line up with that very top wood cube, where we're going to hot glue the rope down to that wood cube. Making sure we keep that rope right up against the wood round, then wrap one of our rope pieces ends around and hot glue that on the other side of the rope we just hot glued down, so that way they sit nice and neat. And to bulk that rope part up a bit, I'm just going to wrap each end around one time, making sure to keep them nice and even. And the way we're doing this is going to keep one of our ropes just a little longer than the other, so our buckets are hanging a little off center, a little asymmetrical. And then we're going to take about 2 feet of that same rope, and maybe 1.5 feet. I don't know. I just want it to be slightly longer than my pulley mechanism. We're going to see how much we need, cut off the excess, which we're going to use later. And I lost the footage, but you just want to hot glue the ends together and then glue about 1 inch worth of those 2 pieces of rope together. Then we're going to take that piece, the excess we cut off, and we're going to separate the strands to where you have 4 smaller strands. And I'm going to take one piece of it, and starting just above where the hot glue starts on the big piece of rope, we're going to hot glue that down and wrap it around. Now I only managed to get about halfway down before I had to attach that piece of rope and then hot glue on another piece and continue wrapping. But that will depend on how much excess rope you had left on your rope. It's a lot of rope. Anyway, we're just going to attach that, wrap it all the way down to where it covers the rest of that hot glue that we put on the larger piece. Hot glue it down and trim off the excess. And it'll look a bit like this. And to jazz it up a bit, I put a little bit of that Dollar Tree lace ribbon right in the center using hot glue. For our buckets, I picked up these 2 little buckets from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to spray paint them using this Rust-Oleum metallic flat soft iron spray paint that I was lucky enough to find in my Walmart clearance section. And once they're all dry, make sure you've painted the bottoms, because you will be able to see those because it's hanging, and just a little inside the bucket, at least about 1 inch down. And don't forget the handles. Now it's time to attach them to our rope. So I just figured out where I wanted my short bucket to go. Well, where I wanted the bucket on the short piece of rope to go. And I just clamped that and then found where I wanted to put my long rope bucket. Makes sense. We're just going to hot glue those together just like we did the hanging portion of this rope mechanism. Trim off, make sure they're even, trim them off, make them even. And then the rest of that excess rope we had cut off earlier, we're just going to split that down into 2 smaller strands and wrap that around, just like we did the hanging part. Just hot glue them, wrap them around, hot glue them again, and they should look like this. Now for our florals, I'm just taking some leftover floral foam I had knocking around, cutting it down so it fits in my buckets. And then I'm going to hot glue that right down into the bottom of the bucket to make sure it stays still. And it's time to add our florals. And I chose these lavender picks from Walmart. You can definitely use Dollar Tree ones or any florals you want. And I'm going to snip those off of the main stem and make sure that your handle for your bucket is where you want it to be when you start putting in your flowers, because the flowers will hold it up in place or prevent it from moving. And then I just covered up any foam that you could see using Spanish moss, and then you repeat that with your other bucket and you would pretty much be done, except I could not help myself and I had to add some rust. So I'm using this Dollar Tree metallic marker and just throwing some rust in there. Like, this turned out so much better than I expected. I mean, honestly, even if you had to buy all the paints and stuff, you'd probably still spend $30 on this project. And opposed to $60, that's still pretty good. I probably spent only about $10 or less on this project because I already had all the paints and things like that. I think it's so worth it, even if you had to spend $30. This turned out so beautiful, and I'm putting it in my window of my living room. The lighting's just bad in there, so I couldn't show you there. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Make sure you tap that notification bell so you know every time I upload a video. As always, have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.